Most people believe leadership starts with power, position, or confidence. That belief is wrong. Leadership starts with how you speak. Before people follow your ideas, they listen to your voice. Before they trust your decisions, they judge your words. And before they respect your authority, they feel your presence through communication. Whether you realize it or not, every time you open your mouth, you are signaling who you are. Weak communication signals uncertainty. Clear communication signals leadership. Talking like a leader does not mean speaking loudly. It does not mean using complex words or dominating conversations. Real leaders speak in a way that makes people feel clarity, certainty, and direction. When a leader speaks, confusion disappears. When a leader speaks, people lean in. When a leader speaks, silence carries weight. If you have ever felt ignored in meetings, talked over in conversations, or misunderstood when explaining your ideas, it is not because your ideas are weak. It is because your communication is not aligned with leadership energy yet. This audiobook will change that. Not by turning you into someone fake, but by refining what is already inside you. The first truth you must understand is this: leaders speak from intention, not from emotion. Most people speak to release feelings. Leaders speak to create outcomes. Every sentence has a purpose. Every pause has meaning. Every word moves the room forward. When you talk like a leader, you are not seeking approval. You are offering direction. One of the biggest mistakes people make is over-explaining. Over-explaining is a sign of insecurity. When you feel the need to justify every sentence, you communicate doubt. Leaders trust their words enough to let them stand alone. They say less, but what they say lands harder. If you want to sound like a leader, start removing unnecessary words. Speak clearly. Stop apologizing for existing. Replace I think with I believe. Replace maybe with certainty. Your language shapes how others see you. Confidence in speech does not come from knowing everything. It comes from being grounded in what you say. Leaders do not rush their sentences. They are comfortable with silence. Silence is power. When you pause before speaking, you show control. When you allow silence after a strong statement, you let it sink in. People who rush sound nervous. People who pause sound intentional. Another powerful shift is learning to speak from the chest, not the throat. When your voice comes from tension, it sounds thin and uncertain. When it comes from calm control, it sounds grounded. Slow your breathing. Relax your jaw. Let your words flow instead of forcing them. This single change can transform how authoritative you sound without changing what you say. Leaders also understand that tone matters more than content. You can say the right words with the wrong tone and lose all impact. A leader's tone is steady, calm, and assured. Not aggressive, not passive, balanced. When emotions rise, leaders lower their tone. When chaos increases, leaders slow down. This contrast makes people trust you instinctively. Another key element of leadership communication is ownership. Leaders own their words. They do not hide behind vague language. Instead of saying mistakes were made, they say, I made a mistake, and here's how we fix it. Ownership builds credibility faster than perfection ever will. People do not expect leaders to be flawless. They expect them to be honest. Clarity is another non-negotiable skill. Leaders organize their thoughts before speaking. They do not dump ideas randomly. They structure communication so others can follow easily. If people feel lost while you speak, they disconnect. Leadership communication feels simple, even when the topic is complex. That simplicity comes from preparation and focus. You must also learn to speak with direction. Leaders do not just describe problems, they guide solutions. Instead of saying, "This is an issue," they say, "This is what we're doing next." Direction creates momentum. When people hear direction, they relax. Uncertainty creates anxiety. Direction creates trust. Your words should also reflect belief. Leaders speak as if the outcome is possible, even before it exists. That belief transfers to others. If you sound unsure, people doubt. If you sound convinced, people listen. This does not mean lying. It means choosing language that reflects confidence in progress rather than fear of failure. Another powerful habit of leaders is listening before speaking. Leadership communication is not a monologue. It is influence through understanding. When you listen fully, your response becomes sharper, more relevant, and more respected. People feel seen. And when people feel seen, they are more open to being led. Leaders also ask better questions. Instead of talking to impress, they ask to understand. Questions shift power in a conversation. The person asking thoughtful questions controls the direction. This is one of the most underrated leadership skills. Speak less. Ask more. Observe more. Then speak with precision. One thing that separates leaders from followers is emotional control. Leaders do not react instantly. They respond intentionally. When something triggers you, pause. Breathe. Choose your words carefully. Emotional reactions weaken authority. Calm responses strengthen it. People trust leaders who remain composed under pressure. You must also learn to align your body language with your words. Leadership communication is not just verbal. Stand still when making important points. Maintain eye contact. Avoid nervous movements. Your body should support your message, not distract from it. When your presence is stable, your words feel stronger. As you move forward in this audiobook, remember this. Leadership is not about becoming louder. It is about becoming clearer. Not about dominating conversations, but about directing energy. Not about sounding smart, but about sounding certain. By mastering how you talk, you change how people treat you. You change how they listen. You change how they respond. And over time, you change how they follow. The way you talk is the way people decide how seriously to take you. Long before results appear, your voice creates expectation. Leaders understand this at a deep level. They do not wait for confidence to magically appear. They build confidence through intentional communication habits practiced every single day. One of the most powerful habits of leaders is decisiveness in language. Indecisive words create weak impressions. Phrases like, "I'm not sure," "I guess," or "maybe" signal hesitation even when the idea is strong. Leaders replace hesitation with clarity. They say what they mean, and they mean what they say. Even when the answer is not perfect, decisiveness builds trust. Another critical skill is learning how to open your mouth with impact. The first few seconds of speaking matter more than most people realize. Leaders do not ease into conversations with filler words. They start strong. A clear opening statement immediately positions you as someone worth listening to. When you begin with purpose, people give you attention without resistance. This is especially important in meetings, presentations, interviews, and everyday conversations. A leader does not wait to be invited into authority. They establish it through how they speak. Calm confidence at the start changes the entire dynamic of the room. Leaders also understand the power of simplicity. Complex language does not equal intelligence. Clear language does. When you simplify your message, more people understand you. When more people understand you, more people follow you. Leadership communication removes confusion instead of adding to it. Another underrated skill is repetition with intention. Leaders repeat key ideas in different ways to ensure clarity. They do not assume people understood the first time. They reinforce what matters. Repetition is not weakness. It is leadership. It ensures alignment and direction. Your pace also matters. Fast speech often comes from nervous energy. Slow, controlled speech comes from certainty. Leaders are never in a rush to be heard. They allow their words to breathe. This calm pace communicates confidence even before the message lands. Leaders also know when not to speak. Silence can be more powerful than words. When you pause instead of filling space, you signal authority. When you listen without interrupting, you show respect. And respect creates influence. Talking like a leader means understanding that communication is as much about restraint as it is about expression. Another powerful shift is speaking in outcomes, not problems. Leaders do not dwell on what went wrong. They speak about what comes next. This future-focused language creates momentum. People feel guided instead of stuck. Direction is one of the most attractive leadership traits. Your choice of words also reflects mindset. Leaders use language that reflects growth, responsibility, and possibility. They do not blame. They do not complain. They communicate solutions. Over time, this language shapes how people perceive your character and capability. This is exactly why communication mastery is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. It affects your career, your relationships, your confidence, and your leadership presence. When you change how you talk, you change how the world responds to you. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, our mission is simple: to help you build the mindset, discipline, and communication skills that turn potential into power. Every audiobook on this channel is designed to help you grow stronger, sharper, and more confident, without hype, without shortcuts, and without fake motivation. If you're listening to this, it means you're already ahead of most people. You are investing in your voice, your presence, and your future. That alone separates leaders from followers. As you continue listening, start applying what you hear. Notice your tone. Notice your pace. Notice your word choices. Leadership is built in moments, not overnight. Every conversation is practice. Every sentence is an opportunity. And if this audiobook is helping you, make sure you stay connected with the Motivational Audiobook Spot. Subscribe to the channel, stay consistent, and keep sharpening your communication skills. The more you train your voice, the stronger your leadership becomes. Remember this: people may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Speak with clarity. Speak with purpose. Speak like a leader. Leadership communication is not about perfection. It is about consistency. The way you speak on your best day should not be completely different from the way you speak on your worst day. Leaders develop a stable communication identity. People know what to expect from them. That predictability creates trust. One of the fastest ways to sound like a leader is to stop seeking validation through speech. Many people speak hoping others will approve, agree, or like them. Leaders speak to move things forward. When your focus shifts from being liked to being clear, your authority increases automatically. Another essential element is emotional neutrality. This does not mean being cold or robotic. It means staying grounded even when emotions are present. Leaders acknowledge emotions without being controlled by them. When others panic, leaders slow down. When others complain, leaders refocus the conversation. This emotional steadiness is felt before it is understood. Leaders also understand how to frame messages. Framing is the difference between resistance and cooperation. Instead of saying, "This is going to be difficult," a leader says, "This will require focus, but it's achievable." The facts remain the same, but the energy shifts. Words frame reality. Another key skill is learning how to disagree without losing respect. Leaders do not attack people. They challenge ideas. They use calm language and firm tone. They say things like, "I see it differently," or "Here's another perspective to consider." This approach keeps conversations productive and positions you as thoughtful rather than reactive. Storytelling is another powerful leadership tool. Leaders use short, relevant stories to make ideas memorable. A simple example, a brief experience, or a clear analogy can make your message stick. Stories humanize authority. They create connection without weakening leadership presence. Another overlooked habit is preparation. Leaders rarely speak off impulse on important matters. They think before they talk. They anticipate questions. They organize their thoughts. This preparation makes their speech sound effortless. People often mistake this for natural talent, but it is discipline. Leaders also communicate boundaries clearly. They do not hint. They do not avoid. They state expectations calmly and directly. Clear boundaries prevent misunderstandings and build respect. People trust leaders who are direct yet fair. One of the strongest communication habits you can develop is learning how to close conversations with clarity. Leaders do not leave discussions open-ended. They summarize key points. They confirm next steps. They ensure alignment. This habit alone can dramatically improve how people perceive your leadership. As you practice these skills, you will notice a shift. People will listen more closely. Interruptions will decrease. Your presence will feel heavier without you saying more. This is not manipulation. This is alignment between your voice, your intent, and your identity. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, we believe leadership is built through daily habits, not dramatic moments. The way you speak to coworkers, friends, and even yourself matters. Self-talk shapes external communication. Leaders speak to themselves with clarity, discipline, and belief. If this audiobook is helping you, stay connected with the Motivational Audiobook Spot. Subscribe to the channel and continue developing the skills that create real-world confidence and influence. Every audiobook here is designed to support long-term growth, not temporary motivation. Remember, leadership is not about being the loudest voice in the room. It is about being the most intentional. When you speak with intention, people listen with respect. As your communication improves, you will begin to notice something important. People start responding to you differently before you say much at all. This is because leadership communication is not just about words. It is about presence. Presence is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever the conversation brings. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is learning how to speak under pressure. Pressure reveals habits. When stress rises, most people speed up, raise their voice, or become defensive. Leaders do the opposite. They slow down. They lower their tone. They choose fewer words. This contrast creates authority in moments when others lose control. Another advanced skill is learning how to reframe negative conversations. When someone brings complaints, leaders acknowledge the concern and redirect toward solutions. They do not dismiss feelings, but they do not stay stuck in them either. This balance builds trust while keeping momentum. Leaders also master the art of timing. Knowing when to speak is just as important as knowing what to say. Interrupting too early weakens your position. Waiting too long can make you seem disengaged. Leaders listen fully, then speak at the moment of maximum impact. This timing makes their words feel decisive. Another crucial habit is alignment between words and action. Leaders do not overpromise. They speak realistically and follow through. Every time your actions match your words, your credibility increases. Over time, people begin to trust not just what you say, but who you are. Leaders also know how to communicate upward and downward. They adapt without losing authenticity. They speak clearly with authority figures and remain respectful with team members. This flexibility is not weakness. It is emotional intelligence. Strong leaders adjust their communication while staying grounded in their values. Your voice is also a leadership tool. Volume, pitch, and rhythm all send signals. Leaders avoid extremes. They do not shout to be heard. They do not whisper to avoid conflict. Their voice remains steady and controlled. This vocal consistency makes people feel safe and focused. Another important skill is learning how to communicate during conflict. Leaders do not avoid difficult conversations. They approach them calmly and directly. They focus on facts, not accusations. They use language that reduces defensiveness and increases understanding. Conflict handled well strengthens leadership presence. As you continue developing these skills, you will realize that leadership communication is a lifelong practice. There is no finish line. Every interaction is training. Every conversation is feedback. Leaders stay curious. They refine constantly. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, we create content for people who want real growth, not shortcuts. If you're serious about improving how you speak, think, and lead, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Each audiobook is designed to help you build confidence that lasts beyond motivation. If this audiobook is adding value to your life, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leadership grows when knowledge is passed forward. The stronger your communication becomes, the more impact you can create. Never forget this. Your voice is a tool. Use it intentionally. Use it responsibly. Use it to lead. As your leadership voice develops, you begin to understand that communication is not about control, it is about clarity. People resist being controlled, but they welcome clarity. Leaders communicate in a way that removes doubt and creates direction without force. One of the most powerful communication habits leaders build is consistency across situations. They do not change their tone based on who is in the room. They remain grounded whether speaking to one person or many. This consistency creates a strong leadership identity that others can rely on. Another key skill is learning how to communicate vision. Leaders do not just explain tasks. They explain why the work matters. When people understand purpose, their engagement increases. Vision-driven language transforms routine actions into meaningful progress. Leaders also understand the importance of emotional awareness. They read the room before speaking. They sense tension, confusion, or resistance and adjust accordingly. This awareness allows leaders to address issues before they escalate. Another advanced habit is learning how to simplify decisions through communication. Leaders reduce complexity by highlighting priorities. They help others focus on what matters most. This ability to cut through noise is one of the most respected leadership traits. Leaders also know how to deliver feedback without damaging morale. They focus on behavior, not personality. They communicate expectations clearly and offer guidance rather than criticism. This approach builds growth instead of fear. As your communication becomes stronger, you may notice people seeking your opinion more often. This is a sign of growing influence. Influence is not demanded. It is earned through consistent, clear, and respectful communication. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, we believe influence comes from inner strength and disciplined habits. This audiobook is designed to help you develop a voice that reflects confidence, respect, and leadership in every situation. If you want to continue building these skills, make sure you're subscribed to the Motivational Audiobook Spot. Every audiobook on this channel is crafted to support long-term personal growth, leadership development, and communication mastery. Remember, leadership is not about speaking more. It is about speaking better. Every word you choose shapes how others experience you. Choose with intention. Your voice has power. Train it. Respect it. Use it to lead. As your communication continues to mature, you will notice that leadership is less about persuasion and more about alignment. When your words, tone, and actions align, people feel it instantly. There is no need to convince. Your presence does the work for you. One of the strongest leadership communication skills is the ability to stay composed during uncertainty. Leaders do not pretend to have all the answers. They speak honestly about what is known and what is still unfolding. This transparency builds trust and keeps people engaged instead of anxious. Another advanced habit is learning how to communicate priorities during change. Change creates noise. Leaders cut through that noise by repeatedly reinforcing what matters most. They remind people of the core goal. This steady messaging creates stability even when circumstances shift. Leaders also know how to speak to different personalities without losing clarity. They adapt their delivery, not their message. This adaptability allows them to connect with a wide range of people while maintaining authority. Another important aspect of leadership communication is accountability. Leaders set clear expectations and hold themselves to the same standards. When leaders admit mistakes and correct course publicly, they strengthen credibility rather than weaken it. As your influence grows, so does your responsibility. People begin to mirror your communication habits. Your calm becomes their calm. Your clarity becomes their clarity. This ripple effect is one of the most powerful aspects of leadership. At the motivational audiobook spot, we focus on building leaders who influence through integrity and discipline. If this audiobook is helping you grow, stay connected by subscribing to the channel. Consistent learning creates consistent leadership. Every conversation you have is shaping your leadership identity. Whether you realize it or not, people are learning how to respond to you through your words. Speak with intention. Speak with purpose. Leadership is not something you announce. It is something people feel when you speak. At a certain point in your growth, you realize something powerful. Leadership communication is no longer something you try to do. It becomes who you are. Your words begin to reflect stability, clarity, and direction naturally. You no longer chase confidence. You operate from it. One of the clearest signs of leadership is how you handle disagreement. Leaders do not personalize opposition. They separate ideas from identity. When challenged, they remain calm, curious, and firm. This emotional discipline immediately elevates how others perceive them. Another advanced skill is learning how to speak when stakes are high. In moments that matter, leaders slow everything down. They reduce language to what is essential: fewer words, clear direction, strong presence. People remember how leaders speak in critical moments more than any other time. Leaders also understand the power of consistency in messaging. They do not change direction every time emotions shift. They reinforce the same core principles repeatedly. This repetition creates trust and long-term alignment. As your communication sharpens, you also become more intentional with energy. Leaders do not engage in unnecessary arguments. They do not explain themselves endlessly. They choose conversations that move things forward. This selective communication preserves authority. Another powerful habit is learning how to end conversations with certainty. Leaders do not leave people guessing. They confirm decisions. They restate expectations. They close discussions with clarity. This habit alone separates leaders from average communicators. At the motivational audiobook spot, we believe true leadership is built quietly through daily discipline. This audiobook is designed to help you develop a voice that carries weight, respect, and influence in every environment. If this content is helping you, make sure you're subscribed to the motivational audiobook spot. Stay consistent. Stay focused. Continue building the communication skills that shape your future. As leadership communication becomes part of who you are, you begin to recognize a deeper truth. Influence does not come from pushing your voice outward. It comes from grounding it inward. Leaders are centered. Their words carry weight because they are not trying to prove anything. One of the most advanced skills you can develop is the ability to remain steady when others are emotional. When tension rises, leaders lower their energy. This emotional contrast instantly shifts the atmosphere. People unconsciously mirror calm. This is how leaders stabilize rooms without saying much. Leaders also understand the difference between urgency and importance. They do not let urgency hijack their tone. Even in fast-moving situations, they speak clearly and calmly. This signals control and competence. Another essential skill is learning how to communicate trust. Leaders trust their teams, their process, and themselves. This trust is reflected in language. They avoid micromanaging words. They empower through clarity and expectation rather than pressure. As your authority grows, people begin to listen not just to what you say, but how you say it. Your pauses, your pacing, and your restraint become part of your leadership signature. You speak when it matters, and that makes every word matter more. At the motivational audiobook spot, our goal is to help you build this level of leadership presence. If this audiobook is helping you refine your voice and mindset, stay connected by subscribing to the channel. Consistency in learning leads to consistency in leadership. Remember, leadership communication is not loud. It is deliberate. It is measured. It is grounded. When your voice reflects inner strength, people respond with respect. This is how leaders communicate without forcing influence. As your communication continues to evolve, you realize that influence grows quietly through consistency and presence rather than force. Leaders do not need to dominate conversations. They command attention because their words are intentional and precise. Every sentence communicates authority, and every pause communicates control. One advanced skill is learning to guide conversations without dictating them. Leaders ask questions that shape outcomes. They use phrasing that encourages alignment. They listen more than they speak, but when they speak, their words create direction and clarity. Influence is built through this balance, not through volume or pressure. Another important element is credibility. Leaders speak from knowledge, experience, and integrity. Even if they are learning, they communicate with confidence in their process. Honesty builds respect. People trust leaders who acknowledge limits yet provide direction. Leaders also know how to frame challenges as opportunities. Instead of emphasizing problems, they highlight solutions and next steps. This framing shifts energy from worry to focus. It encourages collaboration rather than resistance. Your words have the power to inspire action when framed this way. As your mastery grows, people notice the subtle signals in your voice, tone, pacing, and clarity. These nonverbal cues carry more weight than the words themselves. Leadership is reflected in your energy as much as your language. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, we emphasize building these habits daily. If you are applying these strategies, subscribing ensures you continue learning advanced leadership communication techniques. Every audiobook on this channel strengthens your presence, influence, and confidence over time. Another crucial habit is speaking with purpose in every interaction. Leaders never waste words. Every conversation has intent, whether it is to inform, inspire, or guide. Over time, this disciplined communication becomes instinctive. Your presence alone begins to influence outcomes without effort. This adaptability is what makes leadership communication evergreen and effective in any environment. Your words can inspire, direct, and influence. When paired with presence, tone, and consistency, they create authority naturally. Leadership is not forced. It is earned through disciplined communication, repeated over time. Leadership presence is built in the small moments. Every word you speak, every pause you take, every tone you use communicates who you are. Leaders understand this instinctively. They realize that authority is not a title, it is a habit. Every interaction is an opportunity to reinforce credibility and influence. One of the most important habits you can develop is self-awareness in speech. Notice when you use filler words like like, or you know. Notice when your sentences drift without focus. Leaders catch these habits and replace them with intentional, precise, and confident language. This subtle adjustment changes how people perceive you immediately. Another advanced skill is mastering pacing. Leaders speak neither too fast nor too slow. They allow key ideas to land. They pause for emphasis. They adjust speed based on audience engagement. This rhythmic control makes speech more persuasive and memorable. Leaders also know how to handle questions. They answer with clarity, authority, and composure. Even if they do not have the perfect answer, they acknowledge the question and respond thoughtfully. This builds trust and demonstrates control without arrogance. Another critical aspect is energy alignment. Your energy must match your words. If you speak confidently but your posture, gestures, or facial expressions convey uncertainty, your authority diminishes. Leaders practice alignment until communication feels natural and convincing. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, Our goal is to give you practical strategies to refine your communication. If this audiobook is helping you develop your leadership voice, subscribe and continue practicing intentionally. Influence grows through consistency and repetition. Leaders also leverage the power of storytelling. A simple, relevant story can transform a mundane message into a memorable lesson. Stories humanize authority and make abstract ideas concrete. Learning to tell stories effectively enhances both clarity and impact. Another key skill is feedback communication. Leaders give feedback in a way that inspires action rather than defensiveness. They focus on specific behaviors, outcomes, and solutions. This approach builds trust while guiding improvement. Finally, leaders understand that mastery comes from reflection. After every conversation, meeting, or presentation, they review what went well and what could be better. Reflection allows them to adjust their approach continuously, strengthening authority over time. Every word, pause, and emphasis contributes to your leadership identity. Practice intentionally, speak with purpose, and refine your communication consistently. This is how influence grows naturally and sustainably. Leadership is not just about what you say, it's about how people feel when you speak. Authority is sensed long before it is heard. Leaders understand that every interaction shapes perception. Your voice, tone, and choice of words create an invisible presence that precedes you. One of the most powerful skills you can develop is the ability to project calm under pressure. When tension rises, many people rush, raise their voice, or become defensive. Leaders slow down, choose words carefully, and maintain steady energy. This contrast commands respect and focus. Another advanced skill is framing ideas for influence. Leaders do not simply present facts, they present perspective. They highlight opportunities, anticipate objections, and guide attention to solutions. Framing shapes how people interpret information, making your message more persuasive. Leaders also master the art of selective speaking. They speak only when it adds value. They avoid filler conversation or over-explaining. Every sentence has purpose. Concise, intentional communication signals authority and builds trust. Another critical aspect is listening with empathy and precision. Leaders listen not just to respond, but to understand fully. They absorb tone, intention, and emotion. This allows them to respond with accuracy, clarity, and influence, making others feel heard and respected. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, we teach strategies to refine presence, tone, and authority in everyday conversations. If this audiobook is giving you insight, subscribe and continue developing your voice. Consistency transforms potential into leadership. Leaders also understand the power of repetition and reinforcement. Key ideas are restated in different ways until understanding and alignment are achieved. This practice is not redundancy, it is clarity in action. Leadership is as much about presence as it is about words. People respond more to the energy you project than the content of what you say. Leaders understand this and intentionally cultivate a voice that communicates confidence, clarity, and calm. This presence precedes them in every room, every meeting, and every conversation. One of the most advanced skills is speaking with strategic pause. Leaders know that silence carries weight. A well-timed pause emphasizes key points, gives the audience time to absorb ideas, and demonstrates control. Silence is not emptiness. It is power in communication. Another essential skill is communicating vision with clarity. Leaders articulate not just what needs to be done, but why it matters. Vision-driven language inspires action, aligns people toward common goals, and creates a sense of purpose. This transforms routine tasks into meaningful progress. Leaders also practice adaptive communication. They adjust their tone, pace, and phrasing based on the audience, without compromising their core message. This adaptability increases influence while maintaining authenticity. Executive-level communication requires balancing authority with approachability. Another critical aspect is asking questions strategically. Leaders use questions to guide thought, reveal priorities, and encourage collaboration. Thoughtful questioning demonstrates insight and builds engagement without exerting force. People naturally follow leaders who make them feel included while steering direction. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, we teach practical strategies to refine your executive presence, influence, and leadership communication. If this audiobook is helping you elevate your voice, subscribe, and continue applying these principles. Mastery grows through practice, reflection, and repetition. Leaders also communicate accountability effectively. They state expectations clearly and follow through consistently. Their language reinforces responsibility without creating fear or tension. People respect leaders who set standards and honor them. Another advanced habit is reframing challenges as opportunities. Leaders shift focus from obstacles to solutions. The words they choose shape perception, energy, and action. This is how transformational leaders influence outcomes without pressure or coercion. Finally, leaders integrate storytelling for impact. Short, relevant stories illustrate points, humanize authority, and make ideas memorable. Storytelling is a subtle but powerful tool that strengthens both clarity and persuasion. Every word, pause, and gesture reinforces your leadership identity. Speak with intention, listen with awareness, and align energy with message. This is how influence becomes natural and leadership becomes felt. Leadership is reflected in how consistently you communicate under pressure. Most people let stress, impatience, or emotion dictate their words. Leaders, however, remain grounded. They pause, assess, and respond with clarity. This steadiness builds immediate credibility and inspires confidence. One of the most advanced skills is communicating authority without dominating. Leaders speak with certainty and calm, not volume or aggression. They guide discussions, set expectations, and influence outcomes without forcing agreement. Influence through mastery of communication feels effortless, but is deeply intentional. Another crucial skill is clarity in messaging. Leaders distill complex ideas into simple, actionable concepts. People follow clarity more than complexity. A concise, precise statement is remembered long after a long-winded explanation is forgotten. Clear communication is the backbone of credibility. Leaders also master the art of listening actively. They absorb tone, intention, and content before responding. Active listening allows them to respond with authority, relevance, and empathy. When people feel understood, they are naturally aligned with your direction. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, we focus on building these advanced habits so that your influence grows naturally. If this audiobook is helping you, subscribe and continue practicing these principles daily. Leadership is earned through disciplined communication, not by chance. Another advanced habit is managing energy in conversations. Leaders ensure that their tone, volume, and pacing match the intended impact. Calm energy conveys control. Controlled energy inspires trust. Energy alignment magnifies influence beyond words alone. Leaders also embrace reflection after every significant conversation or presentation. They ask themselves what worked, what didn't, and how to improve. This self-evaluation transforms communication into mastery over time. Another critical skill is framing difficult situations positively. Leaders highlight solutions, opportunities, and progress instead of dwelling on problems. This reframing shapes perception and motivates action without pressure. Another essential skill is using storytelling for transformation. Leaders share brief, relevant stories to illustrate points, convey vision, and reinforce values. Storytelling engages emotionally, making ideas stick and inspiring action. Finally, leaders integrate reflection and practice consistently. After every conversation, meeting, or presentation, they analyze impact, timing, tone, and clarity. This iterative refinement strengthens influence and deepens authority over time. Every interaction is an opportunity to refine presence, influence, and leadership communication. Speak with purpose, listen with intent, and align energy with message. Influence becomes natural, and leadership becomes felt in every space you occupy. Leadership is not about being the loudest voice in the room. It is about being the most deliberate, the most clear, and the most influential without forcing attention. Leaders earn respect through consistency, calm authority, and purposeful communication. Every word, every pause, every gesture reinforces their presence. One of the most advanced skills is mastering communication under uncertainty. Leaders speak with clarity even when all the answers aren't known. They acknowledge reality, outline the next steps, and inspire confidence. This ability to navigate ambiguity with composure sets leaders apart. Another critical skill is executive framing. Leaders do not simply convey information. They structure it for maximum understanding and impact. They highlight priorities, guide attention, and create alignment. How a message is framed determines how it is received, and leaders use this strategically to inspire action. Leaders also know the subtle power of presence. Before words are spoken, people sense confidence, control, and clarity. Posture, eye contact, breathing, and tone communicate authority unconsciously. Mastering presence makes every word more impactful. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, we focus on helping you develop executive presence and transformational communication skills. If this audiobook is helping you elevate your leadership, subscribe and continue applying these techniques consistently. Mastery grows with intentional practice. Another advanced habit is influence without pressure. Leaders guide decisions, encourage alignment, and inspire action through clarity and insight rather than force. People naturally follow leaders who make them feel understood, valued, and confident in the path forward. Leaders also refine storytelling as a transformational tool. Short, meaningful stories illustrate vision, reinforce values, and create emotional connection. Stories make ideas memorable, persuasive, and inspiring without overt effort. Another essential skill is reflective practice. Leaders analyze each interaction, what worked, what could be improved, and how to adjust for next time. Reflection strengthens credibility, sharpens influence, and ensures continued growth in leadership communication. Finally, leaders cultivate energy intentionally. Calm, grounded energy, combined with precise language, conveys authority and inspires trust. When voice, energy, and presence align, influence becomes natural, and leadership is felt even without speaking much. Every conversation, every interaction, every decision is an opportunity to refine presence, strengthen influence, and deepen leadership. Speak with intention. Listen with awareness. Act with clarity. Leadership is earned one word at a time. Leadership is earned through deliberate action and intentional communication. People follow those whose words, tone, and presence consistently convey clarity, authority, and trustworthiness. Leadership is cumulative. The impact of every conversation, meeting, and interaction builds over time. One of the most advanced skills is mastering influence without coercion. Leaders guide decisions and shape outcomes through clarity, framing, and strategic questions rather than pressure. Influence becomes natural when communication is grounded in purpose and authenticity. Another critical skill is credibility through consistency. Leaders align words with actions, follow through on promises, and maintain composure under pressure. Every time their behavior matches their message, trust grows and influence deepens. Leaders also understand the power of storytelling for transformation. Brief, relevant stories illustrate complex ideas, humanize authority, and make messages memorable. Stories create emotional connection, reinforcing clarity and guiding action. At the Motivational Audiobook Spot, we teach strategies to elevate presence, sharpen communication, and strengthen influence. If this audiobook is helping you refine your leadership, subscribe and commit to consistent practice. Mastery grows through reflection, repetition, and intentional effort. Another advanced habit is framing challenges as opportunities. Leaders highlight solutions, clarify next steps, and focus attention on what can be controlled. Another advanced skill is reframing challenges as opportunities. Leaders focus on solutions, clarify priorities, and guide attention toward actionable steps. This approach reduces resistance, motivates engagement, and reinforces their authority naturally. Leaders also refine energy and tone intentionally. Calm, grounded energy paired with precise language communicates stability and competence. People follow leaders who project assurance, not just instruction. Reflective practice is another hallmark of mastery. Leaders analyze interactions, assess impact, and refine delivery. Continuous reflection strengthens influence, hones credibility, and elevates executive presence. Finally, remember this: leadership is earned one conversation at a time. Speak with purpose. Listen with intent. Act with clarity. Every word, pause, and gesture reinforces your presence and deepens your impact. Leadership is not a title. It is the cumulative effect of disciplined communication, consistent action, and authentic influence. Your voice is powerful. Your presence is impactful. Your influence is limitless. Use them intentionally. Apply these principles. Practice daily and watch your ability to lead, inspire, and transform grow exponentially. This is the essence of speaking like a leader. This is the transformation. The motivational audiobook spot is here to guide you through. How you speak decides how people see you before they ever understand who you are. Long before your skills are tested, before your experience is measured, before your intelligence is noticed, your words already speak for you. Leaders are not born louder than others. They are not magically more confident. They are not gifted with special voices. Leaders are created by the way they communicate when no one is paying attention, and especially when everyone is watching. Most people talk to be heard. Leaders talk to be understood. And that single difference changes everything. When a leader speaks, people don't just hear sounds, they feel direction. They feel certainty. They feel clarity even in chaos. That is why when a real leader enters a room, the energy shifts without effort. Not because of power, not because of position, but because of presence. Leadership communication is not about using big words. It's about using the right words at the right time with the right intention. In America's professional world, from boardrooms to startups, from classrooms to courtrooms, the people who rise faster are not always the smartest in the room, but the clearest communicators in the room. Clarity builds trust. Trust builds influence. Influence builds leadership. Most people struggle with communication because they try to sound impressive instead of sounding intentional. They talk fast to hide insecurity. They explain too much to avoid silence. They raise their voice to force authority instead of earning it. Leaders do the opposite. They are calm where others rush. They are silent where others panic. They speak with purpose, not pressure. Think about the leaders you respect most. Notice how they speak. They don't rush to fill space. They let pauses work for them. Silence is not weakness for a leader. Silence is control. When you pause before speaking, people listen more closely. When you slow down your words, your authority increases automatically. Speed creates nervous energy. Calm creates confidence. A leader understands that communication is not about winning arguments. It's about winning trust. You don't dominate conversations. You guide them. You don't interrupt. You influence. You don't react emotionally. You respond strategically. Emotional reactions weaken leadership communication. Controlled responses strengthen it. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is learning to speak from certainty instead of emotion. Emotion makes your voice shaky. Certainty makes it steady. Certainty doesn't mean you know everything. It means you believe in what you're saying while remaining open to learning. That balance is what separates arrogance from leadership. Leaders choose their words carefully because they understand that words create reality. When you speak negatively, people feel limited. When you speak with vision, people feel expanded. A leader doesn't say, "This is impossible." A leader says, "This is challenging, but we'll figure it out." Same situation, completely different impact. Strong leaders avoid weak language. Phrases like, "I think maybe," "I'm not sure but," or "this might sound stupid," immediately reduce your authority before your idea even arrives. Leaders don't apologize for their thoughts. They present them with calm confidence, not aggressive, not arrogant, grounded. Your tone matters more than your words. You can say the right sentence with the wrong tone and lose respect instantly. Leaders keep their tone neutral, controlled, and steady. Even when emotions are high, their voice stays low. That contrast alone commands attention. Leadership communication is deeply connected to listening. If you don't listen, you can't lead. People follow leaders who make them feel heard. When someone speaks to you, don't wait for your turn to talk. Listen to understand, then respond with precision. That makes people feel valued, and valued people become loyal. A leader asks better questions instead of giving constant instructions. Questions empower others to think. Statements control. Leaders know when to guide and when to let others discover. Asking, "What do you think?" or "How would you approach this?" builds ownership. Ownership builds commitment. Confidence in communication is built through consistency. Say what you mean what you say. Don't change your tone depending on who you're talking to. Leaders are stable, predictable in values, consistent in delivery. That stability creates psychological safety, which is essential for leadership. In the American professional environment, storytelling is a powerful leadership tool. Facts inform, but stories inspire. Leaders don't just give data, they give meaning. They connect ideas to emotions. They show people not just what needs to be done, but why it matters. A leader never talks down to people. They talk to people. Respect is always present, even in disagreement. You can disagree without being disrespectful. You can correct without humiliating. You can lead without shouting. Authority that needs volume is not authority. It's insecurity. Leadership communication also means knowing when not to speak. Every comment doesn't need your response. Every criticism doesn't need your defense. Leaders choose their battles. They don't waste energy proving themselves. Their work and consistency speak louder than arguments. When you speak like a leader, people feel calm around you. They trust your direction. They believe in your vision. Not because you demanded it, but because your communication made them feel safe, clear, and confident. And this is not a talent. This is a skill that can be learned, practiced, refined, and mastered. The moment you change the way you speak, you change the way people treat you. The moment you master communication, you step into leadership, even before the title arrives. When you continue developing the way you speak, you start to realize that leadership communication is less about talking and more about managing energy. Every word you choose either raises confidence or creates doubt. Every sentence either moves people forward or holds them back. Leaders are aware of this at all times, even when conversations feel casual. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to sound like someone else. They copy accents, phrases, or styles they've seen online. That never works long term. Leadership communication is authentic, not artificial. People can sense when your words are borrowed instead of owned. Real confidence comes from alignment between who you are and how you speak. When your words match your values, your voice naturally carries weight. Leaders understand that communication begins before words. Your posture, eye contact, and breathing shape how your voice is received. If your body looks unsure, your words lose power. That's why leaders stand grounded, shoulders relaxed, chin level, breath slow. When your breathing is controlled, your voice becomes controlled. Calm breath creates calm authority. In high-pressure situations, this becomes even more important. Anyone can sound confident when things are going well. Leaders stand out when things are uncertain. When others panic, leaders slow down. When voices rise, leaders lower theirs. That contrast immediately positions you as someone people look to for direction. Another powerful habit leaders develop is speaking in outcomes instead of problems. Most people describe issues in detail and stay stuck there. Leaders acknowledge the issue briefly, then shift the conversation toward solutions. They don't deny reality, but they don't drown in it either. Their language always points forward. Instead of saying, "This is a mess," a leader says, "Here's how we move forward." Instead of, "We failed," a leader says, "Here's what we learned." This isn't fake positivity, it's strategic framing. The way you frame situations determines how people emotionally respond to them. Leaders also avoid over-explaining. Over-explaining often comes from a desire to be liked or understood. Ironically, it creates the opposite effect. When you explain too much, people assume you're unsure. Leaders explain clearly, then stop. They allow space for questions. That space shows confidence. The ability to say less while meaning more is a leadership superpower. Short, clear sentences are more powerful than long, complicated ones. Complexity confuses. Simplicity leads. When people understand you easily, they trust you faster. A leader's communication is also consistent under criticism. When challenged, insecure speakers become defensive. Leaders stay composed. They listen fully before responding. They acknowledge valid points without surrendering authority. They don't take feedback personally. They take it professionally. This emotional control is what separates leaders from reactors. Reactors speak from ego. Leaders speak from purpose. Ego wants to win. Purpose wants progress. When you speak from purpose, your words feel grounded, not aggressive. In conversations, leaders avoid absolute language. Words like always and never escalate conflict. Leaders choose flexible language that keeps dialogue open. They don't trap people with words. They invite solutions. Leadership communication also means knowing your audience. The way you speak to a team is different from the way you speak to an executive, a client, or a crowd. The message stays the same. The delivery adapts. That adaptability is intelligence, not weakness. In American culture, strong communicators are direct but respectful. They don't hide behind vague language. They say what needs to be said without attacking. Directness builds clarity. Respect builds loyalty. Leaders balance both. A powerful leader speaks with intention, not impulse. Before responding, they ask themselves internally, "What outcome do I want from this conversation?" That single question changes everything. It turns random talk into strategic communication. When leaders give feedback, they don't attack personality. They address behavior. They don't say, "You're careless." They say, "This step was missed, and here's how we fix it." That approach corrects without damaging confidence. Leaders also know how to inspire through vision. They don't just talk about tasks. They talk about purpose. People don't wake up motivated by duties. They wake up motivated by meaning. When you connect work to impact, people engage emotionally. Your voice becomes a leadership tool when it carries certainty, empathy, and direction at the same time. Too much certainty without empathy feels cold. Too much empathy without direction feels weak. Leadership communication lives in the balance. Even humor, when used correctly, strengthens leadership. Leaders don't use humor to distract or belittle. They use it to connect and release tension. A well-timed smile or light remark humanizes authority without reducing it. As your communication improves, you'll notice something important. People start coming to you for clarity. They ask for your opinion. They trust your judgment, not because you demanded leadership, but because your words created it naturally. Leadership is not about speaking more. It's about speaking better. It's about choosing words that move people toward confidence instead of confusion, action instead of fear, unity instead of division. And the more you practice this, the more effortless it becomes. Communication stops feeling forced. Your voice settles. Your presence strengthens. You no longer try to sound like a leader. You simply speak, and leadership follows. This is the foundation. And from here, communication becomes not just a skill, but a signature. As you move deeper into leadership communication, you begin to understand that influence is built long before you speak in front of a crowd. It is built in one-on-one conversations, in meetings where no one is watching, and in moments where you choose restraint over reaction. Leadership language is practiced daily, not performed occasionally. One of the most overlooked aspects of speaking like a leader is internal dialogue. The way you talk to yourself shapes the way you talk to others. If your inner voice is uncertain, your outer voice will reflect it. Leaders train their internal language first. They replace hesitation with clarity. They don't mentally rehearse failure. They mentally rehearse calm responses. When you believe your words matter, others start believing them too. That belief comes from preparation, not ego. Leaders prepare their thoughts before speaking. Even in casual conversations, they take a brief moment to organize their response. That pause creates depth. It shows intention. People feel that you're not just reacting, you're thinking. Persuasive communication is not manipulation, it's alignment. Leaders don't force ideas. They align people with ideas. They show how a direction benefits the group, not just themselves. When people see their own interests reflected in your words, resistance disappears. A powerful leadership habit is repeating key messages consistently over time. People don't remember what you say once. They remember what you say often. Leaders reinforce vision calmly and repeatedly without sounding robotic. Consistency creates culture. When leaders speak, they avoid emotional extremes. They don't exaggerate success and they don't dramatize failure. Their emotional range stays centered. That emotional stability makes people feel safe during uncertainty. Safety builds trust. Trust builds followership. Leaders also understand timing. The same words spoken at the wrong time lose power. Leaders wait until emotions settle before addressing sensitive issues. They don't rush difficult conversations. They choose moments when people are most receptive. One of the most powerful leadership skills is saying no clearly and respectfully. Weak communicators avoid saying no and create confusion. Leaders say no without guilt. They explain briefly, then move forward. Clear boundaries strengthen respect. When conflict arises, leaders don't avoid it. They handle it directly but calmly. They lower their voice instead of raising it. They ask questions instead of making accusations. They seek understanding before resolution. This approach turns tension into progress. Authority in communication does not come from dominance. It comes from decisiveness. Leaders make decisions and communicate them clearly. They don't over-justify. They don't seek constant approval. They take responsibility for outcomes. In group settings, leaders control the pace of conversation. They don't let discussions spiral. They summarize points clearly. They redirect when needed. That ability to structure conversation makes people feel guided, not controlled. A leader's words carry weight because they match actions. Nothing destroys leadership communication faster than inconsistency between words and behavior. When your actions align with your language, credibility grows naturally. Leaders also know how to handle silence from others. If someone doesn't respond immediately, they don't rush to fill the gap. They allow silence to work. Silence gives others space to think. That space often leads to more honest communication. In professional American environments, confidence is often mistaken for loudness. Real leaders prove the opposite. They don't compete for attention. Attention comes to them. Their calm, direct speech cuts through noise effortlessly. When leaders present ideas, they focus on clarity over complexity. They explain the why before the how. People commit emotionally before they commit logically. Once people believe in the purpose, they support the process. Leadership communication also includes how you handle praise. Leaders accept praise briefly and redirect it to the team. That humility strengthens authority instead of weakening it. People respect leaders who elevate others. As you continue practicing, you'll notice your conversations becoming more intentional. You'll speak less, but say more. You'll react less, but influence more. People will start mirroring your communication style without realizing it. That is leadership taking shape. When leadership communication reaches a higher level, it stops being situational and becomes part of who you are. You no longer switch it on for meetings and off for casual talk. Your presence becomes consistent. People feel the same clarity, calm, and confidence from you, whether you are speaking to one person or to a room full of people. At this stage, you begin to understand the psychology behind attention. Attention is not demanded, it is earned. Leaders earn attention by being relevant, composed, and intentional. When you speak, your words are connected to the moment people are living in. You acknowledge reality before directing vision. That acknowledgement builds immediate trust. Public speaking often scares people because they focus on performance instead of connection. Leaders don't try to impress audiences. They try to serve them. When your goal shifts from "how do I look" to "how can I help," nervousness loses its power. Purpose steadies your voice. Leaders prepare by understanding the emotional state of their audience. Are they tired, resistant, uncertain, hopeful? Communication becomes powerful when it meets people where they are, not where you wish they were. You don't ignore emotions. You guide them. A key leadership habit is grounding your message in reality before elevating it. You validate challenges, then provide direction. People don't trust leaders who deny difficulty. They trust leaders who face it calmly and still move forward. When speaking publicly, leaders use simple language and deliberate pacing. They slow down on important points. They allow ideas to land. They don't rush through meaning. Pauses become tools. Silence becomes emphasis. Eye contact plays a major role in authority. Leaders don't scan nervously. They connect intentionally. One thought, one person, one moment. That focused connection makes large audiences feel personal. People remember how you made them feel more than what you said. Leaders also understand that persuasion is emotional before it is logical. You lead with shared values, not arguments. When people feel aligned, they listen openly. Logic then reinforces belief rather than fighting resistance. Fear doesn't disappear at higher levels of leadership. It becomes managed. Leaders feel nerves but don't obey them. They acknowledge the sensation and continue speaking calmly. Courage in communication is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to speak anyway. Another powerful trait is verbal restraint. Leaders don't oversell ideas. They present them clearly and allow people to come toward them. Pressure creates resistance. Calm confidence creates curiosity. In difficult conversations, leaders maintain emotional neutrality. They don't mirror anger. They don't absorb negativity. They stay grounded. That stability often de-escalates situations automatically. People calm down when they feel they are being heard. Leadership communication also means owning mistakes publicly and confidently. Leaders don't hide errors. They acknowledge them, correct them, and move forward. This builds credibility faster than perfection ever could. When leaders delegate, they communicate trust. They don't micromanage with words. They set clear expectations and step back. This shows belief in others' capabilities. That belief often raises performance. As you master these habits, your communication starts shaping culture. People adopt your language. They repeat your phrases. They reflect your calm. That is real influence. Leadership language becomes less about motivation and more about alignment. You don't push people forward. You pull them together. Shared understanding replaces constant instruction. Over time, people associate your voice with clarity. When confusion arises, they look to you. When uncertainty grows, they listen for your direction. This is not accidental. It is the result of consistent, intentional communication. At the highest level, leadership communication becomes quiet confidence. No drama, no exaggeration. Just steady presence and clear direction. As leadership communication matures even further, it begins to influence people beyond immediate results. Your words start shaping beliefs, attitudes, and long-term behavior. This is where communication becomes legacy. Leaders at this level are not just heard in the moment. They are remembered when they are not present. Trust becomes the central currency. People don't follow instructions for long. They follow leaders they trust. And trust is built through consistency in language over time. When your words today align with your words tomorrow, people relax. They stop questioning intent. They start believing direction. Leaders speak with integrity even when it costs them comfort. They don't promise what they can't deliver. They don't exaggerate outcomes. They don't manipulate emotions for short-term wins. Their communication is clean, honest, direct. That honesty becomes their strongest influence. Long-term leadership communication focuses on belief reinforcement. People need to be reminded of why they do what they do, not loudly, not dramatically, calmly, repeatedly. Leaders weave purpose into everyday conversations. Vision becomes part of daily language, not an occasional speech. A powerful leader does not change language under pressure. When stress increases, most people revert to fear-based communication. Leaders stay grounded. Their tone remains steady. Their message remains clear. This emotional regulation is what makes people feel safe during uncertainty. Leaders also understand the power of acknowledgement. They recognize effort publicly and privately, not with empty praise, but with specific language. Specific acknowledgement makes people feel seen. Feeling seen creates loyalty. When leaders correct direction, they do so without attacking identity. They separate performance from worth. This preserves confidence while improving results. People grow faster when they feel respected. Another advanced skill is communicating patience without slowing momentum. Leaders reassure people without lowering standards. They express belief while maintaining accountability. That balance creates sustainable performance instead of burnout. Leaders speak in ways that reduce fear of failure. They frame mistakes as data, not identity. This encourages innovation and honest communication. People stop hiding problems and start solving them. At this stage, your communication influences decision-making without force. People anticipate your expectations. They align naturally. That alignment is the result of repeated clarity, not control. Leadership communication also includes how you exit conversations. Leaders summarize clearly. They restate direction calmly. They leave people knowing what matters next. Confusion disappears when communication ends with clarity. Your words begin to carry emotional memory. People remember how your voice sounded during difficult moments. Calm voices during storms are never forgotten. That memory strengthens trust long after the moment passes. Leadership communication is not something you turn on when it's convenient. It's something you live every day, especially when you're tired, under pressure, or uncertain. Anyone can sound confident when things are going well. Leaders are defined by how they speak when things are unclear, uncomfortable, or difficult. At this level, you stop chasing reactions. You stop trying to impress. You stop explaining yourself to everyone. You understand that every unnecessary word costs authority. Real leaders protect their energy and their language because they know their voice carries emotional weight. You don't respond to everything. You don't argue with noise. You don't match chaos. You maintain your standard, and that standard becomes your power. Leadership communication is about emotional discipline. When someone brings frustration to you, you don't absorb it. When someone challenges you aggressively, you don't mirror it. You stay calm, grounded, and intentional. Emotional control is not silence. It is choice. Strong leaders speak in a way that reduces stress instead of spreading it. They don't rush people. They don't threaten urgency. They create responsibility, not panic. When you say, "This is our responsibility," instead of "this is a problem," people shift emotionally. Ownership replaces fear. At this stage, you understand that not everything needs to be explained. Overcommunication creates confusion. Clear communication creates confidence. Leaders give direction, not speeches. They trust people to execute without constant verbal control. Long-term leadership is built on trust, not motivation. Motivation rises and falls. Trust stays, and trust is created when your words are consistent over time. When people know what to expect from your tone, your values, and your direction, they relax. Relaxed people perform better. A mature leader knows when to speak and when to simply be present. Not every moment needs advice. Sometimes your calm presence is the leadership. Sometimes silence communicates strength better than words. As your communication becomes disciplined, people stop hiding problems from you. They speak honestly. They bring solutions. They feel safe. That safety creates strong cultures. Leadership language is taught without lessons. People learn how to communicate by watching how you handle pressure, disagreement, mistakes, and responsibility. Your tone becomes a reference point. Your behavior becomes a model. When leaders apologize, they do it clearly and briefly. No excuses, no emotional explanations, just ownership and correction. "This was my responsibility. It should have been handled better. Here's what changes." That kind of language builds respect instantly. At the highest level, leadership communication separates ego from responsibility. You're no longer protecting your image. You're protecting the mission, the people, and the direction. That shift changes everything. Even when leaders leave a room, their language stays, their calm stays, their standards stay. That's influence beyond presence. That's legacy. At this stage, leadership communication is no longer about inspiration. It's about stability. People remember how you sounded when things were hard. Calm voices during storms are never forgotten. You begin to realize that leadership language evolves as you grow. The way you spoke while trying to rise is not the way you speak when you're responsible for others. Growth changes words. Responsibility refines tone. And eventually, you stop trying to prove you're a leader. People follow you because leadership is heard in your voice, felt in your presence, trusted in your consistency. This isn't just a way of speaking. It's a way of thinking, a way of responding, a way of showing up. And when you learn to speak this way, the world learns to listen. Leaders also know when to speak about the future and when to focus on the present. They don't overwhelm people with distant vision during urgent moments. They meet immediate needs first, then elevate perspective. As influence grows, restraint becomes even more important. Leaders don't comment on everything. They don't react publicly to every issue. Selective communication increases impact. When you speak less, people listen more. Your communication becomes predictable in values but flexible in delivery. People know what you stand for even before you speak. That predictability creates stability in environments where change is constant. At this level, leadership communication is not about authority. It is about responsibility. You understand that your words affect motivation, confidence, and morale. You choose them carefully, and something subtle happens. People start modeling their communication after yours. Meetings become calmer. Conflicts become clearer. Focus improves. Culture shifts. At the deepest level of leadership communication, words stop being tools and start becoming anchors. Anchors in uncertainty. Anchors in change. Anchors in moments when people feel lost, overwhelmed, or unsure of themselves. This is where leaders are separated permanently from speakers, managers, and motivators. Because motivators create temporary energy. Leaders create lasting belief. Vision communication is not about excitement. It's about reassurance. People don't need leaders to hype the future. They need leaders to make the future feel possible. That happens when vision is grounded, realistic, and emotionally steady. Leaders don't paint fantasy. They paint direction. A powerful leader speaks about the future with calm confidence, not urgency. Urgency creates pressure. Pressure creates anxiety. Anxiety blocks trust. Leaders remove anxiety by communicating certainty in process, even when outcomes are not guaranteed. When setbacks happen, most people explain them defensively. Leaders explain them constructively. They don't hide the truth, but they don't dramatize it either. Their language acknowledges difficulty while reinforcing direction. This balance keeps people emotionally stable during hard times. Leaders never use fear as a long-term communication strategy. Fear may create movement, but it destroys loyalty. Instead, leaders speak to responsibility, purpose, and shared identity. They remind people who they are together. Identity-based communication is far more powerful than fear-based pressure. At this level, leaders are careful with emotional promises. They don't say, "Everything will be fine." They say, "We will face this together." That honesty builds trust without false comfort. People feel respected, not managed. Another advanced element is communicating belief in people before results appear. Leaders speak potential into existence through consistent language. When people hear belief repeatedly, they begin to believe it themselves. That belief changes behavior over time. Leaders also understand that communication continues even in absence. What people say about you when you're not in the room is shaped by how you speak when you are present. Respectful language creates respectful cultures. When addressing large groups, leaders avoid emotional extremes. They don't swing between hype and disappointment. They maintain emotional range. That emotional predictability helps people regulate themselves during change. Leadership communication also matures into long-term patience. Leaders stop trying to convince everyone immediately. They allow belief to develop gradually. They trust consistency more than persuasion. One of the most powerful signs of leadership is how someone communicates during uncertainty. Leaders admit what they don't know without losing authority. They say, "Here's what we know, here's what we don't, and here's what we're doing next." That clarity reduces fear more than false certainty ever could. At this stage, your words begin shaping values. You don't lecture values. You model them verbally. How you speak about pressure, people, mistakes, and responsibility teaches others how to think. Leadership language becomes less emotional and more meaningful. Fewer words, stronger impact, clear direction, calm delivery. People start trusting your silence as much as your speech. They know when you speak, it matters. That trust is rare, and it is earned slowly. Eventually, leadership communication becomes effortless. Not because it is easy, but because it is aligned. Aligned with your values. Aligned with your actions. Aligned with your purpose. You no longer try to sound confident. Confidence is felt. You no longer try to influence. Influence happens naturally. You no longer chase authority. Authority follows clarity. If this message spoke to you, don't let it end here. Real change doesn't come from listening once. It comes from showing up again and again. Subscribe to the motivational audiobook spot, where discipline is built, confidence is sharpened, and leaders are formed through powerful words. Turn on notifications, because every audiobook here is designed to strengthen your mindset, your communication, and your control over life. If you believe in growth, if you believe in becoming better than yesterday, this channel is for you. Stay connected, stay consistent, and remember, the way you speak shapes the life you lead. Welcome to the Motivational Audiobook Spot.